Good evening and welcome to the Monday, August 12 Muscatine School District Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please take roll and help us determine the quorum, please?
Yes. Directors Connard.
Present.
Cooney.
Present.
DeBeat.
Present.
LaRue.
Present.
Phillips.
Present.
Schneider.
Here.
And Shore.
Present.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of the Allegiance led by the Muscatine High School cheerleading team. Can we stand, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. F-I-R-E, fire up, fire up, fire up. F-I-R-E, fire up, fire up, fire up. F-I-R-E, fire up, fire up, fire up. Let's go school board!
What an amazing show. Thank you, Muscatine High School cheerleading team. We would like to welcome everybody here and in this chamber here. We always like to see this place full of people. So regardless of the reason. So welcome all here. Media representatives also are all welcome. With that, we move into the next item, which is Citizen Speaks. If anyone in the audience wants to address the board, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Per Iowa code, we cannot respond or engage in any discussion during the board meeting. And I always remind everybody, if we cannot during the board meeting, that doesn't mean you cannot connect with us. You can call us, you can email us, you can stop us at any place you see us and ask us your question. Anybody would like to address the board? Okay, so with that, we move into the board targets, goals, report. And the first item is students will graduate prepare for post-secondary options. And under that, we have one item, which is Muscatine High School Alternative Program with Ryan and Kathy. Please take it from here.
Thank you guys for allowing us to come in tonight and give you guys a brief overview of the alternative program at the high school. So we are in our developing stages of this program. It was slated to open August 23rd, but we wanted to make sure that you guys had somewhat of an overview before we got started with the school year. So we're going to call it MCAP, which is different than it was last week because we're still in development stages. We thought that the I was just a little bit too much as we went from MyCap to MCAP. So this is the Muscatine Center for Academic Performance. Scott, if you flip to the next slide for me, I'd appreciate it. I forgot I had the clicker here. So the location of the program is going to be housed at the old AEA 9 building next to Crossroads at 1422 Hauser. Currently, we will have 2 full-time teachers and a support staff, and we also have special education support slated for during the day as well. That staff member will not be there full-time, but they are slated during the day. We're looking at an enrollment of approximately 30 students, mostly juniors and seniors. We're going to offer a mixture of in-person education with our teachers and online learning, just because we don't have enough certified staff to completely solve the program there. So we're going to have to do some online things as well with that. We're going to have a huge focus on community involvement with those students and work-based learning involvement with those students. Kathy, is there anything that you want to add? So at this time, if you guys have any questions, happy to answer them, knowing that we are in development and we might have a vague answer for you, but we'll work on getting that for you if you need it. Yeah, Karen.
Okay, you say that mixture of in-person and online education. Would I be correct in thinking that a lot of these kids have already been doing a lot of the online education?
It depends. So some of these students will have taken place on our Odyssey Ware program, which is our component recovery program for students who are behind on credits. So yes, some of them might have received online credits from us. We're not looking at like a completely online environment. That is not what we can offer here. So we want to make sure that we are giving them all of the in-person classes that we possibly can through our certifications of our teachers. However, we know that in order to fully meet the needs of our students, we're going to have to offer things outside of those certification areas for them to be able to graduate. So that's where that online piece comes in.
So just to clarify though, too, students will be at that location working on their computer. And so there'll be a teacher there supporting them. It's not like they're at home or somewhere else. So when we say online, it is in person at that location, and we have teachers there to support them and make sure they're making progress and can answer questions.
Good. Have we identified these 30 students, and are they on board?
So we're in the process of finalizing that right now. We should have that done by the end of this week.
What does eligibility look like?
I'm sorry.
What does the eligibility look like, or how are you enrolling
So,
them?
so we're looking at, we have teacher recommendation, we have counselor recommendation. We've looked at a number of different at-risk criteria through it. So we want kids that are on that cusp of graduation. Like if they stay at the high school, there's probably a pretty good chance they're not going to make it. So that's also why we're focusing on juniors and seniors, because we have a better idea of what they're going to need to make that target of graduation. And we've had at least 2 years with them in the high school and are finding that it's not working the way it should for them. So they need a smaller environment. They need some more, social emotional help. They need a different environment in order for them to continue to be successful.
So that kind of leads into my question. I'm obviously a proponent of earlier interventions. So if, obviously you know these students better, but is there, in the foreseeable future, is this going to grow so we can have more fresh softs? I guess when they're coming out of Susan Clark, they probably can tell you, been there, done that. They can tell you, it'd be nice for me, in my opinion, to see fresh softs start and maybe graduate them out, rather than start when they're perhaps so far behind that we're just spinning our wheels.
Yes. We are fully in support of growing the program. There are some logistical concerns with the building as it sits right now that are going to limit us to the number of students that we can have. Additionally, we just a limited number of staff that we can afford to have out of the building. For Kathy, she's going from meeting with 130 to 150 students a day down to meeting with 30 students a day. So that comes into, that takes away from what we can offer at the high school too. So trying to grow the program effectively, but slowly, so that we can expand that the right way.
Okay, and then just my other, and this is just a thought really more than a question, has there been any to community mentoring with some of these kids?
I honestly, I don't know enough, Kim, to say that that's the truth.
I'm just thinking it would be a good,
So
these kids need somebody that gives a hoot about them.
So one of the things that has been discussed is we'll have counselors rotating over there. We'll have our, just as many staff as we can get over. We'll have administrators rotating over there. Our
When we hire a family resource navigator.
okay, resource navigators will be there. And really what we talked about from the beginning is this program's probably going to serve at most 75 to 80 kids. And thinking about that as we think about that MTSS model, these are our tier 3 kids. So tier 2 supports are within the building, and then these are kind of the kids who need more support. So at some point that could be, like, how does that transition out of Susan Clark? The biggest issue right now is, based on the building as it stands, the restrooms we have a capacity for about 35. So when you add the students and the staff, we're at capacity. If we added more kids, we'd have to renovate, and we're going to renovate those bathrooms. It's just as part of the process and getting the program started. We're not quite there yet.
So the students that, you said you serve 150 kids now what about the other 120 that are in the building that are not going to get served? Are they still going to get served somehow?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're still going to be served. And we can't replace Kathy at the high school, don't get me wrong. Like, what she does with our kids is magical, and I know she doesn't want to hear it, but I'm going to, like, she does wonderful things with our kids. So what we've done is we've had to take those students that she's able to serve now and just disseminate them out among other staff members. So as we look at the social studies department, we know that we were slightly overstaffed last year, we're not now. So we've been able to take those tier 2 kids that she's been serving and take them to other staff members in order to still maintain some of those services that we are giving them.
Would you be able to, in like, maybe not even a semester, maybe that's not enough time, but in like 6 months, could you share with us some of the data points? Like maybe the student that was fully online but never really completing the course or logging in. What does their attendance look like now, and have we re-engaged them? What does the credit recovery look like for the students that were maybe just a little behind? Like, give us like that detailed of an update, because I'm just really curious and I'm excited for this to work.
The other piece I would follow up on is, again, the focus of this program is getting kids across the threshold and being ready for the next step. So there will be a big focus on work-based learning. But what we need to get them to graduate is a lot of those core courses, right? They can also get credit for working, you know, so we know a lot of these kids have jobs and are working, so you know, that will all be a part of that process and getting them the credits they need to graduate.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think along the lines of what she's talking about, if I've got you correctly, is do we have some kind of, ahead of time, what kind of data are we going to be looking at? You know, you guys would know probably better than what we do, but at the same time, if we don't know what that data is supposed to look like, then all of a sudden we're trying to come to you and ask for data, it may be a little late. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. Attendance is a huge one for us. Credit attainment is a huge one for us. General, like, school attitude towards school is also huge. Positive relationships within the school community is going to be something that we look at. The work-based learning. So we have 2 basic levels of work-based learning that we have available to kids now. One is just a work experience where a kid gets some credit for just working, right? And then we have a work-based learning component where we look at evaluations with their employer. We look at reflection. We look at job skills. So we have a more simplistic work experience program, and then we have a more comprehensive work-based learning where we're more career-focused for kids.
All right, don't read into my language. It's just the only way I know how to ask this in one sentence. But is there a goal for like reintegrating, or is it come and graduate?
No, so, and that is one of the things that we've been talking about this whole time, and why our counselors are going over, and why our teachers are still involved. Like, Kathy is still a member of our building leadership team. Like, the kids are more than, like, some kids might have to come back that day to do an elective class that we, like, if we have kids who are involved in welding and really are, like, and want to weld, why wouldn't I keep that kid back at the high school doing some welding classes while they're taking care of some of their other core stuff in there? So we're going to be very flexible. We want to maintain the relationship between the students and the high school and the staff in the high school. This is an integrated program. It is not a standalone.
I think that's always the goal, is to, you know, support them in whatever they need. But for a lot of these kids, they need that smaller environment. And one of the things that I think was clear in the visits that everyone did, and looking at different programs, when you talk to students, when they have the option to go back, a lot of times they want to be there because they've developed that relationship and they're successful, and they want that to continue.
One question too. The last time I think we had this activity was in Garfield, is that correct?
So
Was that the last alternative high school?
the last alternative program we had was East Campus, and that was, it started at Garfield, moved to MCC after that.
How many did that serve at that time? Just to get an idea of what this could grow into again.
So I'm trying to, when I was there in 2012, now there were 43 kids there. When, by the time it finished, there were more, but couldn't give you that number, Matt, sorry.
You guys begin.
That's where we connected up. That's when I was hired on, was to start the freshman academy. And because of the relationship development and the smaller class sizes, the ones we had in the freshman academy then wanted to stick with the program, so then we started Fresh Soft, and then we handed them over to East Campus to finish up that education, and we worked hand in hand with East Campus for several years, so.
The only reason I graduated high school is because of the alternative program back in '93 with the community, with MCC, so I'm really glad this has started back up.
No, and
Very
for,
needed.
yeah, for us, like, being able to integrate our Tier 2 services within the high school for our freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and then being able to offer a true Tier 3 program for our kids is something that we've been lacking and desperately needed. So this is gonna be huge for us.
Thank you.
And I do agree, you know, as I'm listening to this whole discussion, Q&A, I mean, we know in education sometimes for some students, a smaller environment can be the reason for between failing and succeeding. So I see this as a great step now towards helping some of our students and make sure that they will be succeeding in whatever they are doing. So thank you for a great presentation. I don't know if any board members have other questions.
I just want to say we truly appreciate the board's support in this, and we will gladly come back in a few months and give you guys some updates.
I think the other important success component is making sure we have the right people there, and I can tell you from my conversations that Kathy is super passionate about the program and about the students, and I know the other staff members that will be there feel the same way, and I have no doubt they're going to help students succeed.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next item under Board Targets Goals Report is Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. We don't have any presentation under that. And the third item, students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. And under that, we have teacher leadership and compensation, TLC, and I see Becky is ready to start.
Yeah, so I'm going to invite our TLC team up to come on up. So you might be wondering, why are they all here? Well, it has been a while since we've been able to share with the board what our TLC team has been working on. So tonight is just a highlight, some program celebrations, and to share with you what is going on. So I, by no means, do any of the work. It's all of these guys behind me. So if you're counting, there are 18 of them. So we have 18 on our team for this year, and they are comprised, we have 12 that are instructional coaches. They're at the building. We have 3 specialists, and we have 3 induction coaches. And they are each going to be sharing a little bit about their role and what they kind of do on a regular basis and some highlights within that. At your seats, here's our people. I gave you a handout of this because on the screen it kind of looks a little bit hard to see. So our instructional coaches and our induction coaches and our specialists, they have what we call, this is their expectations. So we have expectations and then we have details. So for example, our instructional coach, they have an expectation that they are going to engage teachers in coaching cycles. And the details are what that is. So it kind of explains what is a coaching cycle and the documentation and the data that comes from that and how it is stored. So you have able to read the instructional coach and the induction coach expectations, and they are going to be sharing a little bit more with you, but this gives you a little bit of background knowledge when they start talking about some things that you may or may not be familiar with. So we're going to first start out with instructional coaches. So Karen is going to kind of lead us into discussion and then pass it on to her friends.
Hello, I'm Karen Stern, and I am the instructional coach at Madison Elementary. And so just to let you know, if we can go to the next slide. Oh, I have a clicker. Thank you. Didn't even know I was in the control seat here. All right. So student-centered coaching is the model of coaching that we use as instructional coaches, and it was chosen by this team of coaches. There are numerous models for coaching that just use different protocols, different steps when a coach and a teacher work together. And so we chose to use student-centered coaching as our model, and the reason is because it focuses on student learning outcomes. And so our goal as coaches is we come alongside teachers and we partner with them, and Mark will talk in just a moment about how long and what that looks like, but we always set a student-centered goal. What is it we want the student or students that we're working with in that coaching cycle to be able to do when we start working with that teacher?
As Karen said, I'm Mark BG at the high school. Anyways, usually what happens if you guys were teachers and you came to a coach, you would bring a problem of practice. It might be something as simple as, hey, my students are doing okay, but I'd like to move them further. Or it might be, things are really not going well, and I'd like to partner with you in order to improve student learning outcomes. So what we do is we talk to them a little bit about, hey, what's going on, ask them questions, get them a chance to reflect. Usually we'll look at some data as well. If they don't have data, we'll help them collect that data. From that point, what we try to do is sit down and plan with that teacher or those teachers, and we find a way in that plan to, with the data, come up with strategies that we think are going to be most effective. And we don't leave them be. We actually say, we're going to come in and co-teach with you. We're going to collect some data. We're going to observe. So once that happens, we'll continue to reflect, continue to assess, and see, are our students moving from point A to point B or point B to point C. And that, as you can see up here, we've got, we'll grab some data and an assessment, we'll plan, we'll teach. That might happen once, it might happen twice, we might do it 3 or 4 times. We might finish a cycle and actually come back again because they want to work on something similar, something a little bit different. So really, our goal is, what data do you have? How can we help move students from point A to point B? And if you need us to continue with that process, we'll come back as many times as we need to.
Hi, I'm Emily Duran. I'm an instructional coach at Susan Clark Junior High. And since we all agreed to use this model for our coaching cycles, we wanted a way to collect our data. So we did that through a Google form. Our instructional coaches would submit their coaching cycle on the Google form, and then it would populate into this Looker Studio for us to create this dashboard. And we were able to look at different types of data, like what type of cycle it was, what Muskie core practice was used, and student performance, as well as teacher feedback. So each school had their own page, and they could filter their data and through the different cycles. Having our data in one location allowed us as instructional coaches to analyze and make decisions moving forward.
Hi, I'm Jillian Poppy, and I'm the instructional coach at McKinley. The 194 represents how many cycles we completed this year, but we really wanted to point out that it's not just math or reading. The IJAG, even choir, I know some of us have even in the past done them with the nurse, the counselor, when they come to us for some specific help. So we kind of broke down based from Looker Studio, different categories we've hit with that, and then those Muskie core practices, so you guys can kind of see when we work with those teachers, what they have selected, an area to work on and grow from, and try to get those students' scores moving. We also, at the elementary, when you see relationships, we also have our SEBAs in the building that work with some of them. We also ask the teachers as well as ourselves to reflect, and we fill out that Google form that feeds into the Looker Studio. So these are just some of the testimonials from teachers, but if you really want them, it's 27 pages long. We took it down to just 4 brief ones really quick, and we saw a lot of themes as we went through. I know Alex on our team dug into those and saw some of that. They really like to have somebody sit with them and talk through it and just be an extra ear and support and give them some guidance and just a partner in there to be in the room with them and support them and give them other ideas to help the students increase their learning.
Okay, so next Alex is actually going to talk about the goals that the instructional coaches set for the year
By the way, I'm Mackenzie Strofe. I work at Jefferson. But I wanted to give a little bit of background on how we came up with those 3 goals. So back in May, we, the TLC team, we met and went through kind of like a reflection-ish thing, and then also used a staff survey that was sent out to teachers. And we looked through those reflections and through the surveys and came up with some of the things that we wanted to focus on for this year, the things that we thought were the biggest need. We then came up with some common themes. I think we had like some 40 maybe, and obviously we can't have 40 goals for the year because we wouldn't be successful if we did that. So we did a consensus agreement that Ann Craig with the AEA helped lead us through. We were to put like 3 stars by the things that we wanted to see happen the most, and then we looked at the themes that had the highest number of stars, and we picked these 3 things which we felt would best support teachers and students in this year.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Osbaker from the high school. I think last year was kind of more of a planning phase for how we were kind of standardizing our coaching cycle procedures. So I feel like we did a really good job of being more data oriented. We kind of used the same Google Forms. We used the same coaching cycle documents. Now this year it's more about how can we show student growth, which essentially is going to allow us to see how effective our coaching cycles are. So we're going to collect some baseline data when we go in there. We're going to do our coaching cycle. We're going to do a summative assessment of some kind. That's going to show us how effective that particular coaching cycle was. Last year, in terms of coaching and facilitating teams, I feel like a lot of our work was done trying to get those UPOs done, and then just supporting all the curriculum adoptions that have been going on. This year, we really want to provide more structure and guidance in our CTT. We used to call them PLCs. It's essentially the time that our teachers get together to meet and plan. For a long time, we felt like that was just kind of more of a planning conversation. Realistically, ideally, CTTs are going to be used for interventions. What is going on inside the classroom? What is going on with these 10 particular students that we can create some interventions for so we can help them? And then the last one is best instructional practices. Last year was kind of the first year we rolled out those instruction teams, and so instructional coaches were helping with that. This year we really want to shift to focusing on the Muskie core practices. We're still kind of in the planning phase for that, but we're hoping that buildings get the chance to identify what are the particular Muskie core practices that they feel they need to focus on, and then how can we roll that out with them and ensure fidelity is happening.
Sorry, clickers aren't my thing. We are the induction coaches for the district. I'm Hannah Mackey.
I'm Marcia McGill. And I'm Amy Skidmore.
And so just a little bit about how we're different than your instructional coaches. Your instructional coaches are housed in the buildings. We get to go to all the different school buildings and serve first and second year teachers. We get to do coaching cycles with them, much like these guys do, using a little bit different model, but a lot of the same pieces. However, our first and second year teachers can use a little bit more support. So we get to go in and do that a lot more often. So with the goal of building that teacher capacity, especially around those 8 teaching standards, to grow our teachers, to grow our kids, right? So we do that along with helping the teachers get into their building community as well as like our community, our local community. And some of the ways we do that are classroom observations. We do some co-planning, co-teaching. We review data and help them walk through their data and plan based on that. We model lessons for them sometimes. We find resources with the time that they don't have, as well as provide professional development for them.
So this is our 3rd year running the program, and there's 3 of us now because we've grown. So I think my first year, I had 30 teachers by the end of the year, and then we went to 60, and this year we're at 48. We should have a roster of 15, and I believe we're all at 17 at the moment, which is fine. We'll be fine. We spend 180 minutes per, our goal is 180 minutes per month with each teacher that's on our roster. And those are the total minutes that were spent, that were recorded in our tool that we use, which is called Kiana, which is from the New Teacher Center. So it's completely focused on new teachers and how they grow best. And then we did 198 coaching cycles. So our goal is at least 3 full coaching cycles with each beginning educator. A lot of them we do 4. We try to do 1 per quarter. Some of them don't need 4, some of them need more. So some might get more and some might get just the 3. This next stat I'm super excited about. Out of our 60 teachers we had last year, 97 of them are still in education. And then in our district, there's 92%. So the folks that did leave left to go someplace else, maybe back home, but they're still teaching somewhere. That last figure is from the New Teacher Center. So the average beginning educators retained in teaching is only 75%. So we're super excited about our retention rates.
Okay, so our plans for this year, we have 48 beginning educators this year. We'll do networking, we call them new Muskie networking meetings. We'll do 7 of those this year where they come after school and do some professional learning on things that maybe they've said that they want to learn more about or things that we see that they need a little bit more learning on. And our goal is a really lofty goal of 100% retention.
Yes. Can we ask him now? Or do you want to finish the presentation?
Hello, I'm Paige Williams. I'm the MTSS Specialist for Environment.
I'm Lainey Berry, and I'm the MTSS Specialist for Instruction. This is my turn. You might sense that we're familiar faces. We've been here working with you several times, and I want to first of all say we greatly appreciate your support, the time that you take to examine the instructional resources and practices that we presented, and asking hard questions for us. So I want to make sure that you're acknowledged for all the time and effort that you've put into that. We appreciate that. We kind of have new titles, but the same role. We have kind of developed this process with Paige on the environment side, and I'm on the instruction side of this multi-tiered system of support, and this is just kind of a framework that might not mean a lot to you unless you've been in education, because there's a lot of acronyms there. But I'm on the left-hand side with the instruction, and basically my role is to ensure, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes here, that we're employing strength-based approaches to developing a multi-tiered system of support in instruction that makes sure that we maximize student outcomes. We select high-quality instructional materials and make sure they're implemented with fidelity appropriately and equitably across the district. We also use data-based decision-making practices and evidence-based strategies to make sure that high-quality instruction is provided to all students, and that we have ongoing interventions and progress monitoring to measure the effectiveness of our instruction.
Thank you. And I'm going to talk just a little bit more about the work that both Lainey and I engage in as instructionals and environmental specialists. So we actually have the privilege of working with our district pre-K through 12 buildings. So all 9 buildings were involved in facilitating teams within the buildings and at the district level. We're also helping in supporting in the attainment of our district level goals pertaining to environment, social emotional learning, behavior, as well as academic achievement and instruction. We both plan and lead district and building level professional development based on building CSIP and our district goals. So for instance, as an example of that, on June 3rd and 4th of this past school year, we helped in conducting MTSS strategic planning with teams from across the district. That work was followed up today in 2 days of learning around environment team training for Tier 1 environment practices.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tristan Toll. I am the Technology Instruction Specialist. I am also a pre-K through 12 person that facilitates and helps in every building. My role is really helping. Our district is a one-to-one school, which means every one of our students has some type of device that they're possibly using, whether it be an iPad or a Chromebook. I'm working with teachers and with students on how that technology is integrated into the classroom. So I, again, also just like Paige and Laney, help do district-wide types of training. I do building types of training. I create tutorials. I do a wide variety of things depending on the day. Some of the things that I do, I have gone in and co-taught with teachers using technology, different programs within their classroom. One way is helping teachers teach WeVideo, which allows the students learn how to use WeVideo to be able to show their learning, possibly in a certain subject area, whether it is in social studies. If they're talking about some historical thing, they're able to document or talk about their learning in a video type style that they've created. I've also, with anything in technology, it's great when it works, but if I'm in that building, I am also able to troubleshoot and hopefully help if there is an issue, helping those students or those teachers be able to use that technology more effectively. I also work with other district programs such as Parent Square, which is our communication tool. If I've had parents, if they've had issues, I have taken those requests and tried to help them either getting logged in and different things along those lines. Go Guardian, which is an app or a program that allows our teachers to oversee what students are possibly looking at on their Chromebooks. So there's a wide variety of different programs that our district uses that I have kind of a way involved in some form of it, helping those teachers guide them or helping them learn those programs better along the way. And then research and just new ideas. Technology is ever changing. And within the last few years, the development of artificial intelligence and how that's being used in our world is blowing up. It's getting used more and more. So also researching that type of new technology and how is it being used in the classroom, how can we effectively use it in the classroom in a beneficial way that might help our students and our teachers progress forward.
All right, I'll ask first. All right, my first one is maybe a comment but question for Tristan, because my son just asked me today if he can download an AI study guide app. He said it's required for middle school.
Which one?
I have no idea. But I think I might need the education on if I should say yes. But my questions were more for the coaches, instructional coaches and induction coaches. I might be making this up, but are there state requirements that tell us how many we're supposed to have? Or how are those decisions made? And then in those school districts or buildings, I guess specifically elementary, how do we decide appropriate caseloads? Because those building sizes are very different, but we have one at every school, correct?
Yeah, the state doesn't determine anything. We kind of go by what's out there. What is, what does mentoring induction look like? What is ratio? We use a lot of the new Center for Teacher Development to get best practices for research. When TLC first started, there was a little bit more requirements from the Department of Ed. Those have changed over the years. So now the TLC is kind of a per pupil allocation that is in the general ed fund. So if we choose not to have teacher leadership, then those monies, we don't get those monies. So what we do, we look at our staffing, and typically the ratio is 1 coach per 500 teachers. So that's been the ratio. So, 500 students, not teachers. That was above and beyond. You are listening. It was a trick question. You passed. So yes, 1 coach per 500 students. Yes. So then when you think of the high school, round it to 1,500, 3 teachers, things like that. So you know, we've kind of fiddled around the past where we've had more support, more coaches. Our data didn't reflect adding more. The results weren't necessarily increased. And so based on that, we also receive support through Ann Craig, and she does a lot of best practice, and she also leads other districts in the state of Iowa, so there's alignment with what we're doing. So that's kind of how we came up with the idea of that. And if I'm missing anything, I have some people behind me that can sure come up here to the mic. Yes, Karen.
Go along a little bit with that. So you said something about if we don't use it, we lose it, so to speak. Would that mean we would get money back if we decide to add any back on?
No, because it used to be separate. Now it's part of the pure pupil allocation. So TLC has changed, where before it was different, and now, and I don't know, I'm kind of looking at Tom. I don't know what the...
Can you go to the mic?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, districts would still receive TLC. It's just how, it's up to the district on how to use the TLC allocation we do get. Yeah. It is per pupil. It does follow the student. We do pay other districts TLC. We do receive TLC for districts open enrollment.
So, but what you are saying is that our district or any school district will determine how to use
Yes, that is correct.
allocation. Okay, thank you.
I have another question, but now I'm scared of my microphone, because I think it's me causing a problem. So for the reflections at the end of year with, I guess, the induction coaches, are those based on teacher success measurements, or is it student success as well? So your end-of-year reflections as the coach for the teachers, does that only include teacher goals and successes, or is it also like a reflection of student success?
Well, our number one goal for our teachers is that they get their standard teaching license at the end. So part of the reason that we're working with beginning educators is because when they leave college, they get an initial teaching license, and they have 2 years to meet all of the Iowa 8 teaching standards and the criteria. So our first goal is making sure that our teachers meet all those criteria. Our second goal is to make sure when you have a new teacher, the student learning generally drops just because they're new and they're learning so much on the job, on the fly kind of. So our second goal is to make sure that the students in those classes, we're trying to level the playing field so that they're getting the education. So if we see things, like if we look at data and we're like, okay, our kids aren't growing, like, are you doing this? Sometimes the answer is no, I didn't know I should be doing that. So we're trying to find those gaps and say, okay, well, let's start making sure that we are practicing fluency every day because your fast scores were not where we wanted them to be. And then showing them and giving them the tools and things to be able to do that. So we kind of look at both. But I guess our number one success criteria is that we want them to stay in education and we want them to get their full teaching license. So.
When you say that, in other words, when they graduate from college, they don't technically have a full license.
That's correct.
Why?
They have an initial, because the Iowa teaching standards are pretty tough to meet. So there's 8 teaching standards that they have to be able to meet. One is like planning and preparing for a classroom. One is, you guys might have to help me behind me. There's 8 of them. One is ethical behavior. One is assessment, classroom management. So there's all those pieces. And then underneath each of those pieces, there's like criteria, several criteria they have to meet.
And some they would not get that until they got into the teaching part of the profession.
Right. And we don't, our administrators evaluate for those that are observed a minimum of twice a year for those first 2 years. They can have more observations. So when we go, we have what's called a triad meeting with a principal and a teacher after they're evaluated. So we know which standards they need to work on so we can help them learn those different skills.
Good, thank you.
Quick question too. Does this look the same through all the elementary buildings? Just the TLC process, both instructional and induction, is it the same throughout? I mean, I know sometimes some of the elementaries go off on 7 successful activities and somebody else doing something else, but is this all the same across the elementaries?
So for induction, it would look pretty much the same across all. However, it's a very individualized program. So when we do our initial meeting with our teachers, we tell them what I'm doing with you might not look the same as what I'm doing with Joe down the, Joe down the hallway, because Joe probably needs something different than you.
Okay.
So when we're meeting with them individually, we plan for all of those meetings. So one of the reasons why we're housed here and not at the building is so we have time to plan for our interactions with our teachers. So when we come back, we're thinking about, what do we just do? What do we think this teacher needs next? What questions am I going to ask them the next time I meet with them? Those type of things. So we do a lot of planning for our interactions as well.
Okay, great. And
Yep.
yeah, retention is probably the best thing we can do for our whole community and our school district. So thank you for that hard work.
I have a couple questions. Well, one comment, concern, I don't know. I feel like there should be some gen ed teachers on the TLC team, just because basically that's who you're helping, and it would be good to get their perspective. Do you get their input except for the end of the year thing, surveys? I feel like every committee we have, there's TLC people on every other committee. There aren't gen ed teachers on the TLC committee. I'm not saying, you guys are doing a great job, I'm not, but I just feel like maybe some accountability.
I mean,
right, but you're not in the gen ed setting. I mean, you're not teaching a gen ed classroom, which I feel is a whole different.
Yeah,
it's a very different perspective, because I hear from them quite often, obviously. And I'm just suggesting that perhaps on some of these committees that we include the teachers that you're working with too, to get their perspective and to see what they need. I mean, you guys know what they need because you all have been in the gen ed setting, I realize that, but it's been a while for some of you to have been in the gen ed setting, and also that too is changing with curriculum and everything that changes every year. So I just feel like it's just a suggestion, and it's not, but I think perhaps if we included, you'd have better buy-in perhaps with some of the cycles and some of the things that you do, so they really see the process you go through to come up with your goals and your the details of your expectations. Just a thought. And then, so you said that this is the same across, so instructional coaches spend the same amount of time in meetings with principals and the same amount of time with teachers and the same across the district?
yeah, so if you see at the top of the instructional one, it has 60-40. So we talk about 60-40 a lot. So when you think of an instructional coach, not per day, but when you look at what they're doing, 60% should be spent on coaching, 40% on other. So when you talk about what is tight, 60% is tight. Now, that doesn't mean when I look at my day from 8 to 4 that I'm doing this many hours of this many hours of this. But when you look at the structures, 60-40 on coaching. Their role as an instructional coach is to coach. So that means we need to make sure that they have dedicated time to coach teachers, to be in classrooms doing that. The other 40%, and they can come up here and share their other 40, it could be looking at helping with district-wide assessments, planning PD. Our instructional coaches are the lead on our instructional teams, and so they are part of that, so they're constantly planning professional development. They have a weekly meeting with their principal, that is required. All buildings, all TLC, so they are meeting with their administrative team, and so that is tight.
And that's weekly, not daily, right?
Well, it's required weekly. Many of them, well, I can ask, how often do you talk to your principals?
Well, daily. I meant actually meetings where they're not available to teachers.
Yeah,
is what I
they're
was getting
required
at.
to have a weekly meeting with a set agenda. Many of them do much
right.
more than that.
I do understand that. What about, and correct me if I'm wrong because I may have this wrong, but teachers have to come to ICs. ICs can't approach teachers as to if there's issues in the classroom. Is that correct?
No, ICs are available to coach anyone.
Right, but I mean, do they have to wait for a teacher to request a coaching cycle? They can, with the
No, and I would
administrators?
say, well, come on up, coaches. How do you engage teachers? I don't want to speak for them.
Hi, I'm Brianna Riley. I'm an instructional coach at Susan Clark. So the way that we interact with teachers is a two-way street. So often they are coming to us when they have a problem of practice, but other times we're reaching out to them and we might say something like, hey, it's been a while since I've seen your students in your classroom. I'm really excited to see what learning is going on. Is there any way that I can come in and help you? And it might be for a short 2-week session, it might be for 6 weeks. So it's always an open door. It might be a hallway conversation with them. It might be a recommendation by a department head. Say the math department might want to all work together on a coaching cycle where we're working individually and assessing data together. So it really is a two-way street. So there is no set, they have to reach out to us. We often reach out to them if we're interested, and that helps us ensure that we're reaching more departments more frequently.
Thank you.
Based on what your question was, your comment. So currently teachers are on a 3-year cycle. So year 1 and year 2, they are on an individual teacher professional development plan, otherwise known as an IPTY-DIPTY. I know, but that's what it's called. And then year 3 is when they are formally evaluated by their principal. Year 1 and 2, when they're on their IPTY-DIPTY plan, teachers can, they create a goal based on that aligns with the district CSIP and the building CSIP. As part of, it's a requirement that they go through one coaching cycle during that 2-year time frame. So a coaching cycle, whether it's a mini for a couple weeks or a full cycle, that's up to the teacher. So all teachers, all career teachers will have at least one coaching cycle during a 3-year period. So those our coaches kind of say, okay, who's in IPTY-DIPTY year 2? So they kind of work with those teachers first because it is required. And it's on their IPTY-DIPTY form, have you had a coaching cycle? And they have to mark it, yes, and then by the coach. So coaching, so that's one way to get coaches into classrooms, and like you said, kind of building that capacity for more. They would have the data that would tell you, did it lead to another coaching cycle or did it lead to something else? So they would have a testimonial for that.
Okay, and I guess I'm gonna be honest here. I maybe it's the position we're in, but I get a lot of negative feedback sometimes about ICs and approachability, and I'm not saying I agree or whatever, but I'm just wondering, is there a way that you feel that you could get better buy-in from teachers to use the services that you guys have available? Or just something to think about? I don't need a comment right now. I'm just... Sure, yeah.
Say your question one more time.
Well, I just feel like, do you have some... I feel like maybe you need to develop from the feedback I'm getting, which again, in our position, I think we get the negative more than the positive. But to get more buy-in from the teachers that are actually in the classrooms, do you have strategies to
yeah, I think
bring them to you, because you do have a wealth of knowledge and you have a lot of resources, and I don't feel like everybody utilizes you, and sometimes...
Yeah, I think at the junior high, we've done a pretty good job at like creating a welcoming environment. Brianna and I, instead of having an office, we have a classroom in the middle of our building, so we're like right next door to teachers all the time, and like they can come to our room anytime. Our space is very welcoming. We have coffee, we have snacks, candy, and we also help lead PD in our building every other week. So after each PD session in the mornings, we do like a little exit ticket or Google form that asks like, would you like support on this? So teachers can follow up on that. And then from those surveys, we individually, like Brianna and I, go to those people and say like, hey, the PD was on relationships or whatever core practice it was. And then we work with those teachers that have requested that support. I think in our building it's working pretty well. Brianna and I did we had coaching cycles with 75% of our staff. That's more than we've ever had. Our goal this year is to do 90% or more, so I think it's working.
Good, thank you.
Also, one quick thing that we do for as an incentive is we do offer 1 credit hour towards relicensure if teachers engage in a coaching cycle with a coach. So they can do that in tandem with their formal evaluation year. So
can that be a mini as well?
It has to be a full coaching cycle for that.
Go ahead.
I would say based off of all the coaching cycles that I've done, I haven't heard any negative feedback, and maybe like they're not being, and I'm not saying that you're like saying that we're all doing a bad job. I guess what I'm getting to is we have essentially doubled the amount of coaching cycles that we've done from last year, 2 years ago, and to last year. So I would say that that's a good trend that we're on. Now that we require teachers in that 3-year evaluation to do a coaching cycle in year 2, we have a lot of veteran teachers who never did a coaching cycle before. So imagine you've been teaching for 25 years and all of a sudden, who's this 30-year-old kid who's gonna tell me what to do? Well, that's not the idea. The idea is they need to get used to this coaching cycle, not because it's forced upon you, but because it is allowing for student growth. And I think we're getting to that point of teachers are slowly buying into it. So I think it's been a work in progress. I think the work that we have done the past 2 years has standardized our processes across the board. I think we're in really good shape.
I'm not saying there's negative after a coaching cycle. I guess I just feel like you said, what's a 30-year-old going to tell me? And I think you're changing that, and that's what I'm saying. Are there strategies to get those people to buy in and use your resources? Because you do have great resources. And I haven't had negative feedback from people who have done the cycles. It's just getting everybody to do the cycles, which I was not aware of, the one every 3 years. So that is a positive too, because they'll get to experience and see what it really is meant for.
And I would just tack on, I've been at the high school for, I think, 4 years now in this role, and I would share that collecting my own data, and this is just my own data, that I've worked with 75% of our staff in some capacity, and that's a large number. And I'd guess the coaches we've had at the high school would probably bump that number up a little bit more. Also, to the point about being just gen ed teachers, being on the TLC team, love the feedback. All 3 of our coaches at the high school who are here tonight are actually teaching a section of something this year in their own classroom. And so I think not only does that allow our teachers to see, hey, these guys are, in it with us, but we're also going to join our collaborative teacher teams in the mornings, and we're going to be planning alongside them, looking at student data, and then obviously using that data for interventions.
I think the more cycles you do, the more that feedback will go too, because I think just being an outsider that goes in, I think sometimes we see the 40% where you're getting pulled a million directions, and maybe your 40% is actually 80% sometimes. Not telling anyone, but I think sometimes that happens because you're covering a lot of shortages and things, or high student needs, and we have our whole MTSS, and so you're pulled to do a lot more things. And I feel like we're in a good staffing position right now, and the buildings are really leveling out, so I think this could be a really good year for it to feel like you're accomplishing a lot. So hopefully that will happen. I did look up the standards for the licensure because I thought maybe I needed to know that. So for number 1, Marcia, is that it demonstrates the ability to enhance academic performance, right? So is that where, I guess I see a lot of teachers, we have a lot of new teachers in our district, and I love the retention, but then how do they know they're doing a good job, I guess, is what I'm thinking. So when we look at standard 1, are we looking at the student success? This is how I should have phrased my question the first time, probably. Are we looking at student success in that to say, we created growth, here's what that feedback looks like, and then coaching developed from there?
Well, first of all, we have to get them, so a lot of times our new teachers, they focus on what they're not doing well. They don't really focus on what's going well. So we have to get them to a place where they can see what the good things that they're doing. So whenever we see good things, we bring that up. I mean, a lot of times it's everything that's not going well, and they're forgetting all the things that are going really well. So helping them be aware of all the things they're doing right, so then the things that aren't going well, we can start writing those ship from a more positive aspect rather than, and it's really hard your first 2 years teaching. It's a really hard thing. And there's a whole thing that teachers dip. There's like a roller coaster ride that they ride that first year. They come in all excited, and then there's like an October dip that pretty much everybody we go see, it's not good for them. and then it gets better right after Christmas break. But yeah, whenever we see good things, we want to make sure they're noticing that, because what they're going to notice is anything that's not going well.
So what happens after year 2?
After year 2, they would get a full teaching license. If they are not ready, there is a 3rd year. So if they're not ready and they don't get that full teaching, they can go another year with us. But ideally, they would get their full teaching license, and we turn them over to these folks. And I think if you looked at our data, which we could pull that data and give you, they're getting a lot of our former people, they get a lot of coaching cycles with those folks because they've done a whole bunch of coaching cycles with them, and it's just part of what they do. And our program is just 3 years old, so the way we're doing it is relatively new. So I think that the people behind me would say that we are getting a lot of our 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year teachers saying, yeah, I'll do a coaching cycle. I know somebody did one with Kendra for like the whole district where people came in and watched, and that was one of my first teachers my first year. So they're very comfortable having people in the room working with other people.
Part of my question was with what the last that she said there, because if they don't by that 3rd year, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here, what happens to them then?
Usually there's been a whole lot of conversations if they're not meeting the teaching standards by the end of the 3rd year, so it shouldn't be a surprise to them or to us that that's a problem. So basically if they don't get Jamie, you might need to help me with this. If they don't get a full teaching license here, I think they can go somewhere else, but I'm not sure. So
start over at another location or something.
So if they are not meeting all 8 of those standards at the conclusion of year 2, we can opt to give them that 3rd year. If we're seeing growth, we have done that. If it's a situation where there's absolutely no growth seen, or in fact, in one instance, it's regressing, and it's impacting students negatively, they're probationary. And that's when we can exercise those probationary rights, and we can part ways. Like Marcia said, usually there's been a lot of conversations by that point. I'm usually involved, and we're trying everything we can to get them to grow up to the level we need them to be. Not maturity, but to get to the level of teaching that we need. And so there's a lot that goes into that, and we really, I always say, I would rather put the time and effort into coaching someone up than coaching someone out, because again, that's just more work for me. I have to go find somebody to do it then, right? And so we try really hard to retain those people, but sometimes it's just not a fit. Does that mean that they will never teach again? Likely no. They can go to other districts.
They start over then with the cycle, or?
It depends on how that district chooses to do it. They would need to get a request from the Board of Educational Examiners to get a 3rd year on their initial license then, to be able to meet those standards in their new district.
That's what I was thinking then. Do we end up maybe with some of those folks?
No.
No offense, so. Okay.
No.
Well, and I think for new teachers, I mean, we're still in that, we can blame COVID, right? Like, there was a huge learning curve for everyone that came out of school and into a classroom. And so I'm guessing that you're probably having a lot more work to do. And I know you said your caseloads are already a little higher than what you'd be comfortable. They're fine, you're gonna do fine.
And I would say it's starting to stabilize now. Just from what I'm seeing when I'm recruiting, the caliber of students is starting to take that shift back into what we were seeing pre-pandemic. Like you said, that COVID piece really did not do anybody any help in terms of a lot of these kids were doing student-teacher placements and practicums online. And it was very hard. Some states, it's much easier to get a teaching license, and then they come here and it's like, oh my goodness, now what? Because Iowa is pretty rigorous. So we're seeing that starting to turn around. I have to say, like, our class of new hire, like beginning educators this last year, I was so impressed at what we had coming in and who we have staying, that it's giving me that hope that we're on that other side of the hill, and we're going to continue seeing that level of really high caliber students coming in.
But one thing I would like to say, as I'm listening to everybody's points here and comments, I think, as John, that teachers prove to all of us that they are the only group of people that changes very quick and adapt to changes very quick over one weekend during COVID. No one else could do that. So that change by itself and the adoption to that change was totally a great thing on behalf of any teacher. So this is something also we need to
It taught us what we could do,
about.
really.
Exactly.
It gave us those tools that we can be more flexible in how we think about education and what we're doing for kids. But, you know, it really gives us that look that, okay, maybe we're on that flip side. COVID now that we're seeing more of what we used to see in teacher preparedness programs. So it's exciting for me. I'm very excited to see our retention be this high.
I got a question for Becky, I guess. So the instructional coaches, do they ever go back into the classroom as far as, you know, these people here are obviously master teachers or whatever. Do they, they're coaching, but are there term limits or are there?
No, and in the past, Denny, we've tried some different things, thinking that you can coach for 3 years and then you need to cycle back at least 1 year and reapply. We've done that before. Currently, we don't use that model because it wasn't effective. It seemed like by the time we had somebody new and onboarding, that year or two had already passed and they have 1 year left, and then it got kind of confusing. So currently, our coaches are our coaches. They are evaluated yearly by their principal. I evaluate the 6 that are here at the board office. So they have a yearly evaluation with a principal, but they too are also on that 3-year cycle. So on their 3rd year, because they're career teachers, they have the formal observation through the principal in the same format that all of our other teachers go through. If there is a need for a tier plan of assistance, they follow the same system as any other teacher would be. Conversations would be had with the principal, the coach, and we would follow the same format as we do with teachers.
So we have a lot of experience here that are not directly involved with students daily.
So do these, repeat that?
Correct. These teachers here are not involved with students daily.
Can you guys come up? Because I would say yes, they do have interaction with students because they are in the classroom, but, or any of our coaches.
I would argue that coaches have the capacity to touch more kids, to have hands on more kids' lives, because we get to interact with so many different classrooms with teachers, like alongside them. So I'd say we have a direct impact. We also help with their planning, and we get to know their kids because we're in their rooms so often. And I can only speak from induction coach perspective, but.
And in the instructional coaching position, we do have that 60-40 requirement. And with student-centered coaching, which is the model that we use with career teachers, co-teaching is a huge part of that model. So every time that we assess and plan with teachers, we are then expected to co-teach with them and be in the classroom with teachers. So with that 60-40 paired with student-centered coaching, we are in classrooms every day. But it does vary, but on the whole, most instructional coaches are in multiple classrooms every day.
I'd like to, you know, I've visited buildings before. I'd like to sit in and see this in place.
Well, and I think with the slide we had, the Looker Studio, where you saw the 194 coaching cycles that were done last year. So we start all again. We start at 0 this year. And that's been a really nice tool to put it in front of teachers when they have their weekly CTTs and their BLT and all of that kind of stuff. They're looking at this data, so the whole building can see our coaches here have coached X amount of teachers, X amount of cycles on whatever those core Muskie practices are. So it's by no means a secret at all. So now that we kind of have this dashboard, as some of them kind of alluded to, coaching is very public now. So, which is a good thing, because buildings can kind of look at their data. They can kind of look and see where coaching is happening, and it's another entry point for teachers. So, are you saying that when they do a coaching cycle, you want them to email?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, you got that? Ken.
This says induction coach will meet with beginning teachers at least 180 minutes each month. Is that with each beginning coach?
Yes.
Every one of them gets that.
Yes, yep. Our BEs, we call them BEs, beginning educators, so that's anyone that's on their 1st year or their 2nd year of teaching. So yeah, and that's when you saw the stat of over 100,000 minutes have been spent. It's good. And they talked a little bit about their monthly networking meetings, so teachers come out here and we pay them they get compensated for their time. So they come out here 3:45 to 5:15, and so we're able to use TLC dollars to compensate all of those year BE 1 and 2s that are spending time. And they like that. And their attendance, it's amazingly good. So, yes. You're welcome.
Okay, this is my last question, and it's
Okay.
an easy one, I think. So the core practices, are those like our core values? What are
Our Muskie core practices, feedback, our Muskie,
So we've identified the core practices that we want to see in every single classroom, whether it's a early childhood pre-K classroom through AP chemistry. It's best practice instruction that we want to see in every classroom, and that's what we're supporting.
are they on the looker?
They're-
Oh, I
Go back.
kept thinking of the core values, and I'm pretty sure
But
that's
they're
not
kind of
what
like
you're
core
talking about.
values for instruction, right?
So they're
Yeah, but it's really small.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
There it is. Relationships, feedback, purposeful planning. Those are our Muskie core practices.
Gotcha.
Which are walkthroughs, administrator walkthroughs,
I've seen this before, it was
Round.
just, I
Yep,
was not
yep,
connecting,
And,
okay.
and again, we can tie those, and I think, Alex, you did that, tying those to effect size. So when you look at research best practice, what are the things that are going to have the biggest impact on student learning? And it is those things, right? So these are the things we want to see and support in every single classroom.
Any more questions?
And I just want to make a comment, too. We've got a great team up here, and one of the things when I meet with new teachers, which we'll do on Wednesday, and some of these are brand-new teachers, but some of them have been other places, right? They could be career teachers. But every time I stand in front of them, I will tell them, because we know, for different reasons, some people won't stay with us. Husband, wife gets transferred, they're moving, they want to get closer for all kinds of reasons, not just because they haven't been successful here. But one thing I guarantee them is that they will be better as teachers because they were here. And I believe that. And I'm going to tell them on Wednesday. And I get passionate about that. But it's the work that we do with them, with these coaches, with all of our teachers, whoever they are, that helps do that. So I feel very confident that I can say that, and it's going to happen. Wherever they go, whether they stay here or they're somewhere else, they will be a better teacher because they were in this district.
I don't think I've ever been in a school and not seen, like, when you all walked up here, I'm like, oh, I knew what schools you belong to because you're visible. So I think that that's important too.
Becky and your team, thank you. Great presentation, great Q&A, so keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving forward with our agenda, we turn to superintendent updates, please.
Well, settle in. I've got some stuff to update, so. Maybe not as dynamic as our last presentations, but, so one, I want to start with an update on AEAs and kind of where we are with that. As you know, in the legislation, so thinking about 3 buckets of funding, the special ed bucket, the instructional kind of professional development support, and then media services. Those are the 3 areas. Special ed, based on the legislation, special ed doesn't change. 100% of the special ed dollars flow still to the AEA to support those services. For the other 2 buckets, 60% stays with the AEA for this year, 40% comes to districts, okay? So the work that the AEAs have been doing across the state is determining, when we look at all of the districts we serve, what's in that 60% foundation? What are we ensuring that everybody gets with that 60%? And then what becomes part of that 40% that you're paying, essentially paying for service now, right? So they've kind of streamlined that, and they have that kind of put together. But we're gonna have to see how that plays out, right? So for us, that's and again, I shared this earlier in our community conversations. What we've known in some ways with AEAs is that larger districts really have been subsidizing smaller districts, right, with those AEA funds. And so each district is kind of unique in what that 60-40 looks like. We're in a pretty good spot with ours, but what I would tell you is those dollars funded services in the past, and they still will fund services. We don't know exactly what those will be, right? So we have come up with a process where buildings can request, so what they used to do in the past is, you know, let's say Madison wants training on differentiation or something that we don't do as well here. AEA, they call up the AEA, AEA comes out, does training, right? They would just do it. We can't do that anymore, right? We're gonna pay for those services. So we have to have a mechanism that says, here's what, at a building that we want, right? And we know what it's gonna cost to bring each one of their specialists for a certain number of hours. We have that cost, right? So we can track what that will look like. Next year, the following year, it goes 100% to the district, and then we pay for services. So these first couple of years, we're really gonna have to like feel our way through and what that looks like. And I would be very hesitant to say, here's how we should spend all that money, because I just don't know. And I don't know what the following year is gonna look like. I also know that the AEAs have been subsidizing special ed services with media and those instructional dollars as well. So when they needed more services for special ed students, they had those funds that they could just move it over from another bucket. They don't have that anymore, right? So how this whole thing is gonna look still needs to be, we just need to get through these first couple of years to see. What I found out on Friday that I did share in our community conversation is apparently the state has determined that of our 40%, $133 per student now is applied to all non-public students. So by district, they do, however many non-public students you have, times 133, and that amount is reduced from your allocation, okay? So I don't know exactly what I think is happening, because again, we just got this information. What I think is going to happen is the AEA in some way will keep those funds and then provide services, but I'm not 100% sure, right? I will tell you, it's not something that was communicated when the legislation was passed, right? This is on top of the ESA and the education savings accounts and everything else. So again, for us as a district, we're looking at about, and again, I'm going to use ballpark numbers here because things seem to continue to change, about $300,000 that the district would have access to for services. That gets reduced by about $35,000, okay? So we're still in a good place. There's already districts who are kind of upside down because they're smaller, right? You had districts who were really close that now are going to be even closer or maybe upside down. And then there are certain districts, large districts, or places with a lot of private school opportunities. It's a huge hit, and some of them are in our area here, right? So again, how all of this kind of gets played out, we'll continue to keep a close eye on that. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a sign off then between Tom or yourself of where those
Yeah,
the
so-
AEA won't provide a service unless they have your signature? or
Correct.
somebody's
So
signature?
like what we did
You're
with
watching that
ESSER,
budget then?
what we did with ESSER funds, we had ESSER funds available, right? We had a process, buildings could say, here's what we want, and then we would sit down and discuss those services and say, yep, we can do that, or no, right? And it'll be based on, the funds that we have available for that. So again, we have been very fortunate to have great service provided by our AEA. We know that they're down staff, and they're down special ed staff as well. So, we think they're still gonna provide us great service, but the long-term future is still undetermined, right? So I think we just wanna be really cautious this year in how we leverage those dollars and ensure we're in a good place moving forward and know how that's gonna be impacted next year when it becomes 100%. Okay. Questions about the AEA piece?
I just have one question. I guess my wife's involved in this, the Writing for Success program at the Ag Center. And I think they get special ed monies we provide, so that's gonna,
So they should still have, all the special ed funds should still be there, right? That shouldn't be going away. I don't know overall how that impacts the AEA in terms of how much was being subsidized by the other funds. I really don't know, right? So there is a little bit of that, how does this play out, right?
I know the AEA has, some of that money was coming from the AEA to the Writing Success.
Yeah. So in theory, none of that should change. Okay. But can I guarantee that for 100%? No. And like I said, I thought we had a pretty good handle on it, and then Friday was told that, and then I actually got the information today. So I'll continue to keep you posted on what that looks like, okay? Just some other quick updates. We do have a joint council with the city and the county that we're supposed to hold in September, so we'll probably be reaching out to look for dates and trying to confirm something there. If we can't find something that September may become October, we'll just see how that goes. We talked a little bit already. New teachers are starting on Wednesday. We have a tremendous program for them that really, I think, helps them come in, feel good about the support that they're going to get to be successful here. I know when our folks are really excited about it, that they, when new staff come in, that they're excited about it too. All staff start on the 16th, and we'll have our all staff kickoff that morning at the high school, and hope to see all of you there. And then first day with students on the 23rd. A couple of other updates. And I shared this with you, but our ag program, which was recognized as the Iowa Educators Association, Iowa Ag Educators Association State Program of the Year. Because they were Iowa State Program of the Year, they go on to Region 3, which is a big chunk of Midwest states. And then they were just notified that we were that region District of the Year. So that's one of 6 in the country that has that recognition this year. So obviously we have a tremendous program. I will be inviting them to come, I think in September, to just be in front of you so we can hear from them and say congratulations. This wouldn't have been a good night for them. It's State Fair. So I know a lot of them are probably in Des Moines or in and around there, certainly this week. So we'll be bringing them to you probably in September. I've shared with you our district environment committee. So each building has an environment team, and I will say today in this room we had 85 people representing each building has an environment team as well. So they were getting specific training on environment team, what that looks like, how it's going to function. They're laying things out. They're going to be here tomorrow to finish that work. So we have a district environment committee as well, and that represents, again, all of our buildings. It represents our teachers, our paraprofessionals, transportation. It's really kind of a cross-section of all of our staff. We have focused our goals on communication, behavior, and professional development. And when you think about our results from the DDE survey, those come right from there, right? So that group, working with our building and our survey data, identified those 3 areas. We didn't finish our work in May, so we brought folks back in and paid for them to come in June to do some additional work. So we really kind of built those out as SMART goals. And so they haven't had a chance to see kind of the final product yet. So our first meeting with that group will be September 5th. So my plan is to have them meet on the 5th. We're going to go through those kind of finalized goals and SMART goals and action steps. And then I'll invite volunteers from that group to come to the board meeting in September to talk to you as well about what that work looks like. And again, that's some of the things are already like moving forward. For instance, all schools by September 1st will meet with all of their staff and run through that behavior matrix. Remember that big, has all of, here are the behaviors, here's the response, here's what we're gonna do, right? Here are all those options. So every staff member sees that, has an opportunity to engage in that. So that's as an example of one of the steps that will be taken right away, as well as a survey on professional development that then we can use to help guide and develop our PD throughout the year. And then we'll continue to get that kind of survey feedback to make adjustments. So I want to give them an opportunity to engage in that first, and then we'll bring them here to the board to share some of that work with you. Want to let you know that staffing, we're in a really good place, probably better than we've been for a while. And so that looks good. Kindergarten, right now, as of this morning, it looked like we had 305 kindergartners. So anytime we can get above 300, I think last year at this time we were like 290 something, so a little bit higher than last year. And we typically grow through the year as more students come in. So that's a good positive sign. So we'll keep you updated on that. And then I just wanted to also let you know this year, starting this year, we will be streaming all of our sporting events internally. We have cameras at all of our fields and in our gymnasiums, and we can connect to that and provide that stream. So we're still working through that process and getting some play-by-play to that as well. But part of that goal is to bring our students in. So at the high school, we have like video production, and they do the Muskie Minutes, and they're involved in that. And so a lot of kids are interested in so trying to get some of our students involved in that process as well. So once that time comes, it will be free. We'll provide a link. Anyone can leverage that link and see our athletic events. Okay. Then the last thing I want to mention, see, I told you this was going to be a little more lengthy. Just as we get further in the agenda, we're going to get to those Title IX policies. And essentially, there were changes from the federal level on Title IX, which changed a lot of our policies and practices, and you just recently approved all of those. Right after you approved those, there was a court case injunction, which Iowa now as a state is involved in. And that essentially said there's a dispute on Title IX, and so until that dispute is resolved, we're going to go back to what it previously was. So tonight, you're going to be voting to rescind them. The reason we're talking about this now is because when we get to that, you are going to rescind them. You can do it all in one motion. We don't have to go through each one of them. So when somebody makes the motion, you can motion to rescind as recommended in that item, okay? And we can do it all at once. And I can answer questions at that time, but just before we got to that, I just wanted to put that in front of you, okay? Questions for me?
Project updates, we all looking good for the start of the school year with projects? Volume will be done, and anything else pending that we're concerned about, I guess, for the start of the year?
I think, go ahead, Chris, come on up, but things seem to be moving well. I think our central project with the auditorium and the gymnasium, they've poured the parking lot there, so that's moving along. They're repairing the roof right now, and we'll get into the next phase of that here very soon as well. Jefferson's moving along really well. Did they start drywall this week? I know there was conversation that interior, they'll be getting close to getting.
They got a water pipe last week, so they started drywall this week there. Parking lot, barring no rain, should start to get poured. They already started some sidewalk there. They got part of that sidewalk of the parking lot done at Central. Susan Clark's going really well. Basically everything underground is done there. The track is, the asphalt portion of the track is poured there. They have to wait 15 days for it to cure, get all the water out, and then they'll put the top coat on, which then we have to wait 10 days for that, then they'll paint it. So, but that's scheduled to be complete by the end of the month, basically. So, we'll use that interior part of that field there for practice, plus we're gonna create a little smaller section, just so we have two different practice areas for football this year. But our summer projects are going really well. I think we're gonna, we're pouring some stairs over at Madison to go up that hill, that parking lot on the left-hand side of the building. They always had to walk all the way around, so we put some stairs and a sidewalk there for them. So that'll be done. That'll be completed this week. And just a lot of you know, odds and ends, small things that the maintenance team's working through, but as
The-
far as the
probably
big projects, they're going really
only
well.
thing that's being held up in some ways right now is our playground projects. So they started at Mulberry. They will get that finished.
Yep.
The problem has been it's taken a lot longer because we've had a lot of rain. And so that slowed that down, which means Grant's
Grant's pushed back into October now, I think is what they're saying, but Mulberry will be done before school starts.
Kitchen and everything's going well there too.
Yep.
Kitchen's all.
Yeah, we're almost have it done, closed out, which Tom really wants to have happen. We're dealing with a few, you know, the floor of the kitchen is still kind of we're a little bit at odds with the flooring people. So we're working through some ideas to help that, and then we'll kind of reevaluate it. So they're gonna come in and kind of deep clean it. And then when that's done, we're gonna come up with kind of a cleaning program and see if that helps the appearance of the floor a little bit. So, but we're pretty close there.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Couple things for you. First of all, I just wanted to make sure I say this to the rest of the board. I had a chance to be able to go in and do a walkthrough for the new kitchen. If you have not done that yet, please take the time to do it. It is awesome. I mean, especially when she started talking about making homemade blueberries, I wanted one of those right then and there. The equipment and everything is wonderful. The thing that I did automatically recognize was myself not being a contractor or anything that way, was those floors and the problems. And there was some edging work and different things like that. And I know also on the, where the trucks come up to the thing that there's a level difference on that.
Yep.
Yes, so you're working on hopefully a long-term solution, not a short-term solution on that area as well.
Yep, no, I think we have a plan for that. We're gonna build a little ramp that will raise the level of the truck, you know, it's about 18 inches off. So when they lower the timing gate, it didn't work out very well, but we have a plan to be able to, when the truck backs up, it's gonna raise it 18 inches so it's flat, so it's easier for them to, because it is a little bit of a hazard right now.
Right, and just as long as it's more of a long-term plan rather than a short-term, because I know sometimes when you use wood, that might not necessarily be a good solution plan.
You know, we can't concrete that because there's drainage issues there, and there's actually a drain down there, so we can't just raise the whole ramp up by 18 inches. So, you know, we'll build it so it's a permanent solution, but, you know, obviously if it wore out, we can rebuild it or look at different options.
And then on the central update, we had a brief conversation, and you indicated that you've finally got back some of the specs or something. Can you tell us a little bit about where that's at?
Yeah, we're still waiting from the architects to give us a prioritized list of improvements and costs associated with those. So as soon as we get that, I think we can move forward with, you know, getting the group back together and kind of coming up with a plan to start the renovation process there.
Okay. Do you have like a deadline for them? Because we're talking, this has been going on since probably, what, February or something along those lines?
Yeah, that independent evaluator that came in is really slow getting back to them. I know that Leggett has been in contact a number of times, pushing them to get that information back, so.
We just had a meeting with them, and part of what we're asking them to do, and this auditorium specialist, you know, obviously there's some wants and there's some needs, right? What are the needs? What do we need to do to bring it up to code and just from a legal standpoint? And then what are the things like, again, these would be the highest priorities in terms of functionality, right? So as we are looking at kind of finishing those projects out, as we're finalizing some of the additional bonding, that's what we're kind of keeping in mind. Then we know we have, you know, some community groups, some grant opportunities. How can we leverage those to kind of take it to the next level?
The good news, I think, about that, we will have the gym up and running and functioning for this school year. So we've kind of done that ourselves along the way. So there's some pretty nice improvements in there. New lights, the floor is going to be stripped down, repainted, kind of like the MHS floor. We've painted most of the walls, and maybe not the ones way up there. They're a little more difficult, but most of the walls, the railings, we got kind of rid of all the green that was in there and turned it more into, musky purple and gold. But that'll be available, and the floor being redone was a big thing there. That floor was in really bad shape, so, but that'll be available for use, basically all fall and throughout the school year, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other question for Clint? Chris?
Oh, I had one more actually not for you, for Clint, if I could, please. One thing that Tony has done a great job is taking care of, giving us the notes as the community conversation is going on. So I was able to kind of track what was going on. And I know one of the questions was about cell phone usage. Could you tell us a little bit what that conversation was?
Yeah, so the question came up about, cell phone policy, and obviously we don't allow it at the elementary and the junior high. Last year, in working with the high school, they really wanted to focus on actually enforcing the policy that they had, which would prevent a lot of that. And so what they're moving forward with this year is purchasing, I'm going to call them phone hotels, right? So for every classroom, you come in the class, put your phone in, it basically locks them up until they're done, right? But also, again, needing to have that conversation as a staff, so we're doing it consistently. Because if we're not doing it in all of our classrooms, it's not going to be effective. And in addition to that, I think there was a Quad City Times article this past weekend and sharing a number of districts, and a majority of them are looking at policies, they're looking at the phone hotels. So I think we're in the same spot as a lot of other districts in really determining how we're going to move forward with it to support learning, right? That's ultimately the goal. It's not we want to take these away from you. How do we ensure the best learning environment possible? And I think I mentioned this previously. In my last meeting with the governor, which was, I don't know, it was either early June or late May, one of the things that we talked about in that meeting with a number of superintendents was looking at some potential legislation from the state level that would do that. And certainly anything's going to have some resistance, but from a group of superintendents, when we can unanimously say, yeah, that would help us and help our administrators at the high school level, it was all of us saying the same thing. So I think there might be some interest in that, and certainly we'll meet with legislators before the session this year, and we'll continue to share that and see where that goes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving forward with our agenda, we move into the next item, action, possible action. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. The items are 1, minutes, 2, bills and claims, 3, employment recommendations, 4, statewide voluntary preschool program 24-25 contracts, 5, food service vendor contracts, 6, 2024-25 MOU with Shared Visions partners, 7, 2023-24 special education contract with L&M, 8, 2024-25 MOU with EICC student teachers, 9, 2024-25 agreement with Unity Point at Home Services, 10, 2024-25 MOU with AIM coordinated service, 11, 24-25 agreement with River Valley Cooperative, 12, 24-27 MOU with Luther College for student teachers, 13, board policies that are no minimal required by law. 14, third and final reading of board policies. And 15, third and final reading of student handbook. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just on the student handbook for P, or was it 15? Yeah, just maybe in one of the future meetings, we can reassess that policy for the cell phone usage too, just to maybe extend to other smart devices or however, I noticed earbuds were added, I think, in the last year, so just seeing how that's working
Sure.
at high school.
So is that like a suggestion to change that or
discussion.
just a discussion?
Just
Okay,
discussion.
a discussion point. Anybody would like to respond to that or?
I think I took it as a comment and something that we'll kind of keep an eye on. One of the things we talked about in that cell phone conversation and community conversations is smart devices continually change, right? More and more things are connected, our watches, our earbuds, like all of those things. They have glasses now that are like, so it's something like anything else we're gonna have to constantly keep an eye on. We may need to update language to adapt to some of those changes.
And I don't think we could make a suggestion now, because that's policy. I think that's just a direct copy paste, so.
Yeah, so well taken, thank you. And yeah, definitely, with technology, we don't know what to expect anymore. So yeah, that's a good point. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, those of you who are in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, thank you. Motion carried. That takes us to page 3 on our agenda, item Q, to approve the purchase of a 2021 GMC medium-duty cargo van and a 2022 GMC medium-duty 2500s cargo van from Next Gen Motors of Muscatine for a total of $70,900. What are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? Okay, those of you who are in favor of approving the purchase of 2021 GMC medium-duty cargo van and 2022 GMC medium-duty 2500 cargo van from Next Gen Motors of Muscatine for the total amount of $70,900. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. Next item is to approve the engagement letter with Ehlers and Cooney for legal services rendered as bond counsel for the school infrastructure, sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds, 2024 series. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the engagement letter.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, briefly. Just so you know, one time when I actually met some folks from Ehlers and Cooney's, when we were up at Des Moines, I asked them who the Cooney was, considering my last name is Cooney. And just so you know, it is no relation, and the gentleman is not any part of it anymore. In fact, he passed away. And so, but they still kept the name as such. So considering that's part of the record, I thought maybe I probably better make note that it has nothing to do with this Cooney.
Thank you for that verification. Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor of approving the engagement letter with Ehlers and Cooney for legal services rendered as bond counsel for the school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds 2024 series. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. And the next item is what Clint was talking about before, where we can have a motion to rescind those policies in one motion. Next item is to rescind the following policy pending federal district court action. So I will go through the policy and list them, and then we can have a motion to rescind all of them in one motion. The first one is 104.1, Title 9, Discrimination and Harassment Based on Sex Prohibited. Next item is 104.1R1, Title 9, Discrimination and Harassment Based on Sex Prohibited Administrative Regulations. Item 3, 104.1R2, Title 9, Discrimination and Harassment Based on Sex Prohibited Non-Discrimination in Pregnancy and Related Conditions, Administrative Regulations. Item 4, 104.1R3, Title 9, Discrimination and Harassment Based on Sex Prohibited, Responding to Complaints of Sex Discrimination, Administrative Regulations. Item 5, 104.1R4, Title 9, Discrimination and Harassment Based on Sex Prohibited, Grievance Procedure, Administrative Regulations. And the last item is item 6, 104.1R5, Title 9, Discrimination and Harassment Based on Sex Prohibited, Informal Resolution, Administrative Regulations. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to rescind the policies.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any question?
Can we just say that, like, we do have policies in place and we're going back to them
This just
then,
goes back to
or
what we just replaced, so
Right.
just put
Okay.
that exactly
So
back in. And
it's not
these,
that there are no procedures in the
Correct.
instance that anything happens. It's, yeah, just wanted to say that out loud.
Any other? Okay, those of you are in favor of resending the policies pending federal district court action, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. Now, we move into discussion and information, and the first item is financials, and Tom is ready for us.
So I got a thin report here tonight. Just getting you up to date on June and July. Bank reconciliation and cash balances, comparing those to the prior month, each of them. In June, June was the end of our fiscal year, so we are working diligently in the finance department to close out our fiscal year here over the next several weeks. Our school district audit will be the week of September 3rd, and our certified annual report, big day in Iowa schools, is September 15th. So next month we will have a report on FY24, and then we are working on FY25 with new teacher contracts, getting those uploaded for September, and so there's just another list of things to be doing. So the next board meeting is that special meeting. It's not on this agenda, it's on the end of the agenda, but it is the meeting where we will be selling the final $3 million worth of revenue bonds for construction projects. And then we will, just to update here on the cash balances, and just something I've been vocal about, so you guys know, in July you'll see in the general fund on page 3, our general fund went down $4.6 million. That's not uncommon. Our revenue is all received by the end of June, state aid, property tax, so we need that cash reserve to basically pay our payroll and our bills in July and August. So you'll see another decline in August once we get that reconciled. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I can entertain them. But
Can you clarify one line item that we're in the bills this month? it said monthly elevator things, but there were two of them for like $3,000. We don't pay $3,000 a month for elevator inspections, right?
I would have to go
Sorry.
back and look, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't know exactly what.
I'm guessing that might be an annual fee
it
for
could
the
be.
monthly fees.
It could be the annual, but for the elevators, I don't remember the name of the vendor. I can certainly look it up. And it's not, it wouldn't be a month, it might be, yeah, I don't guess, it's not, anyway, sorry. I'll have to look it up, but no problem. Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. And the next item is the board development workshop. I know Daphne attached the letter that we received from Tammy Drober, who is the board development director for Iowa Association of School Boards. And I did also resend it today to all of you to catch your attention regarding that. On behalf of the board, I did communicate with Tammy after the session and thank her again for spending 3 hours with us here, going through the training session on July 26th. And the letter is 2 pages letter. Obviously, she put some sort of a discussion highlights, consideration for next step, and obviously the IASB recommendations. So any question about that letter or the content of that letter? And Clint, please also share.
Again, I appreciate everyone's time, great discussion. I think, you know, having those opportunities to learn together is important and something we need to continue to look to do. I think it's great that we'll be recognized for that board learning at the annual conference in November. And I will try to get mine finished up as well. I've got 5 hours to go, so Daphne reminds me every once in a while, and so I'm gonna try to get that done as well. But I thought, you know, again, great conversation, and in the end, there was a lot of commonality on the things that we're wanting to accomplish and the things we have been focused on, which indicates we are moving in the right direction, right? We're doing the right things, and we want to continue to do those things. So again, I appreciate the time and the collaboration through that process.
I would just add a quick on there too. The 3 hours went by pretty fast. And I think that's partially, as Clinton, as you say, that we were able to understand and realize what we needed to do and why we needed to do it. So it wasn't like we were clashing or anything along those lines, but we were collaborating quite a bit. And I look forward to, if there's another opportunity in the future for us to do something else, that would be great.
And we did talk, Karen, about future opportunities, and I'm sure it will happen. One of the things that she shared with us in that letter, and I think it's really important to share that also here as we are discussing this letter, is that when we talk about the 4 years vision for us as a board, and without even thinking, all of us came with the outcomes for students and environment. We talk about this, which is basically that's what our strategic planning that we have. So it's an indication that we as board members are also aware of our strategic plans. We are taking that seriously, and we are working together as one team in order to achieve that. So those are very important points. Obviously, you know, I think it was a very valuable experience, and I'm exactly like you now, Clint. I'm working on those 15 hours, hoping that I would finish them sometime in September, so way before that November session. But anybody else would like to share more points? Or okay. Good work, everybody, and I'm well hoping that we'll have opportunities like that also in the future. So with that, we move into item C, review administrative regulations. Item 1, 501.2, attendance, student absence. excused and unexcused. That's administration regulation. And item 2 is 501.4 R1, student promotion, retention, admin, also admin regulations. Any question about either or? Question about either or? Okay, so with that, that takes us to item D, announcements, meetings, events. August 14 and 15, 2024, Muskie University new teachers at the MCSD Admin Center on the 2900 Mulberry Avenue. August 16, 2024, all staff in service, Muscatine High School, 2705 Cedar Street, 7 a.m. breakfast, 8 a.m. staff picture, 8:30 a.m. super in service. August 21, 2024, back to school nights for Susan Clark Junior High and Muscatine High School classroom visits, pre-K to 6th grade. August 22, 2024, a new Muskie Day, classroom visits also pre-K through 6. August 23rd, 2024, first day for all students, pre-K through 12. August 26, 2024, a special board meeting at 4 p.m. here at the building here, MCSD, 2900 Mulberry Avenue. September 9, 2024, community conversations at 5:30 p.m. at the MCSD building, 2900 Mulberry Avenue. September 9, 2024, regular board meeting at 6:15 p.m. Same thing, the MCSD building, 2900 Mulberry Avenue. Anybody have anything else to share or add to this list? Well, one of the things that I would like to say, and I would like to share here, I took the chance and the opportunity to visit the Sparks program. And I will tell you, I spent a really good time visiting that program. I do believe that we have a lot of things to celebrate in our school district. What I witnessed in my eyes, the program itself, how rich that program was for our students this summer, that made me feel that this is definitely a must program every summer because it's something to be proud of. And I thank Candy and Corey and everybody involved in this program. But, you know, the most important thing, the kids who are learning in a very positive environment. So this is something that I'm hoping all of us as a board will be very supportive. And I have no doubt that all of you are supportive of this program. But this is something I thought like I would share with everybody. With that, anything else before?
I can share also with the Sparks. My grandson attended this summer, and his growth was obvious. I mean, it's a great program. I, too, went to visit. It was actually the last day, but it was just so, he looked so forward to going to that every day. He didn't want to miss it, so it's a great program.
Excellent story. Thank you, Ken. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Those of you who are in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.